So, Chapter 4, the Early Societies of South Asia. So, one of the earliest civilization, one of the first major civilization to appear in this area is the Harappan or Indus Valley Society. The farming begins in the Indus River Valley around 8000 BCE, most likely due to Mesopotamian influence via trade. Obviously, it's because, as the name implies, the society is centered around the Indus River Valley. The Indus River provides enriched water from the mountain ranges, though the Indus River is not as unpredictable as, say, the Euphrates and the Tigris. It is still not as predictable as the Nile River. This major society of the Indus River Valley was built by the Dravidian peoples from 3000 to 2500 BCE. It's much larger than Mesopotamia and Egypt. Its major cities were Harappa in the Punjab region and Mohenjo-daro, which is closer to the mouth of the Indus River. So far, 70 smaller sites have been excavated with a total of 1,500 total. Now, for mysterious circumstance and for mysterious reasons that still remain unknown to this day, the society declines after 1900 BCE. The culture and society of the Indus River Valley of the Harappans was only really discovered in the 1920s. They produced volumes of writing, and yet we still have not deciphered it. And thus, it much remains speculative. However, we do know that there must have been some kind of central political authority that was able to exert its will over the region, because there are standardized weights and bricks throughout this large area. There was evidence of social stratification. Some people had larger dwellings than others. There were broad streets, citadels, pools, and, interestingly enough, advanced sewage and purification systems long before the Romans come onto the scene. They had a strong tradition of art and metallurgy. They were the first chicken farmers in the world. They had city walls, but there is no evidence to suggest of royal authority. And they traded with Sumerian merchants, and they venerated goddesses of fertility, as we can see that some of the Dravidian fertility goddesses will transfer over into Hinduism. And so this is just a nice little map showing the three major civilizations around 2000 BCE. The Indus River, the Harappan society here, centered around the Indus River Valley. We can see Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, the Mesopotamians and the Egyptians, and they weren't isolated. And these guys weren't just completely isolated in their own little worlds. They clearly interact with each other, because we can see there are trade routes connecting all three of them, and connecting Mesopotamia and the Harappans by sea through the Persian Gulf and the Arabian Sea. So we don't know why they just disappear. Why the society disappears. There is evidence of excessive deforestation and loss of topsoil around in the Indus River Valley. However, perhaps earthquakes contributed to their demise. Perhaps flooding. I mean, we do see quite a few unburied bodies at Mohenjo-daro. No matter what reasons cause its demise, the society disappears around 1500 BCE. Now, Harappan traditions did survive in the form of agricultural practices, religious beliefs, and urban traditions. So we have a new group, the Aryan or Aryans, who are Indo-Europeans, Indo-Europeans, who are the Central Asian nomads, if you remember from an earlier video. These Aryans, who call themselves wheat color due to their lighter skin, come from the north. They come from the north via horses, because they're Central Asian nomads, through the Khyber Pass for the Hindu Kush Mountains. Because horses don't breed very well, and sorry for the spelling errors in this presentation. Because horses don't breed well they stayed in contact with the northern cousins in order to have access to horses. They pushed aside and or mated with the local Dravidians, the darker-skinned sedentary inhabitants of the Indus Valley. However, there is no evidence of a large-scale military conquest. It was more of just a wave after wave after wave of migrations and invasions, not just because they weren't really organized or under political authority. The early Aryans had a pastoral economy centered around herding sheep, goats, horses, and cattle. Now, obviously, these guys weren't vegetarians. The vegetarianism wouldn't really come around until centuries later, which with the influence of southern India, their holy hymns, the Vedas, were compiled by 1400 BCE and passed down orally until 600 BCE when written down. It was written in Sanskrit for sacred tongue. For everyday purposes, they used Prakrit, which would later evolve into Hindi, Urdu, and Bengali. And there were 4 Vedas, with the most important being the Rig Veda. And they basically just they were comprised of 1,028 hymns to their gods. The Vedic Age, supposed lasting from 1500 to 500 BCE, named so because the Vedas were compiled around this time. Oops, sorry about that. There were conflicts between the Aryans and the indigenous dasas, or enemies/subject peoples in Sanskrit. The Aryans were fighting the Dravidians and fighting amongst each other. They were organized into chiefdoms, led by the Rajas. Their early concentrations were in Punjab, with the migrations continuing on south. They did develop iron metallurgy, which allowed for them to open up the Ganges River. However, they became more and more dependent on agriculture as time went by, and their tribal connections evolved into political structures. As a result, you get the development of the caste system, which largely served as a substitute or a replacement for political structures and laws in maintaining order. So, you might be asking, why did the Aryans beat the Dravidians? Beat in quotes. Was it because they were white? Or was it because they were lighter skinned? And is it because they had superior brains, that they were genetically superior? Of course not. It's because they had horses, and the fact that the Aryans originated in the Eurasian steppe, that they could get access to these horses. You know, as my AP World History, as they say, it's geography, stupid, not genetics. Or as some British historians would call it, maps, not chaps. And another example of this would be my AP World History loves talking about is, if zebras could be tamed, we'd all be speaking Zulu. Because if some people just had better geography and thus better access to new technologies, history could have turned out very different. So, the Varna, or the caste system with its sharp hereditary class distinction. Varna, interestingly enough, is Sanskrit for skin color. So, at the highest, you had were the Brahmins, who were comprised of priests. Below them were the Kshatriya, or the warriors. I'm probably butchering these pronunciations. I'm so sorry if I am messing these up. Below them, you had the Vaishyas, or the merchants. Below them, the Sudra, the commoner. The Harijan, or the untouchables, or pariahs. Now they're called Dalits. The Harijan would come later, and they were called the untouchables because they did jobs so horrible that people thought, oh my gosh, I can't touch them without catching something or cursing myself. You also had a complex system of sub-castes organized around jobs, and they related to urbanization, and this all happened because of urbanization, increasing social and economic complexity. You could have some, some social mobility, but it was mostly due to as a group, not by individuals, because of the fact that the jati system had all these intricate rules of, how should you meet, how should you greet someone, how should you treat someone, basically a very complex system of courtesy rules and regulations of how to treat each other. Patriarchy. Obviously, you had to rule the father, father knows best. This patriarchy would supplement the caste system and the Varna hierarchy. It'll be codified in the law book of Manu, with the law book saying, men should respect women. Women must only stay in the household, raise children, bear children, cook, that sort of thing. And the poster child of patriarchy is the sati, the practice of sati, where the wife literally jumps onto a funeral pyre of her deceased husband because supposedly she cannot survive without him. And religion. So, the major deity of their Rig Veda was Indra, their war god. The Aryans would tell plenty of stories of how Indra, this glorious warrior, vanquished the subject peoples. They also had another god. They also had Varuna in charge of ethics. house of clay would be the evildoers, and the world of the fathers for the good, kind of like the hell and heaven, kind of like hell and heaven in Christianity. However, the key focus was on ritual sacrifices to the gods, of animals. And of course, these sacrifices were often performed under the influence of substances, like substances or drugs. The Brahmins got their high social status because they were important in appeasing the gods for the sacrifices. Now, around 1800 BCE, some people are getting sick of the sterile, mechanical nature of the sacrifices. The Brahmin just uttering these words and they just sacrifice. Some people start finding these practices meaningless. So as a result, you get proto-Hinduism and proto-Buddhism with the rise of the hermit, the mystic, guru, menkidet, ascetic, yogi, and sage. I probably pronounced it. This is all influenced by the local Dravidian ideas of reincarnation. Teachings of the Upanishads. These texts were basically that originate later on in the Vedic Age that were a blending of Aryan and Dravidian traditions. Composed around 800 to 400 BCE, with some later collections lasting going into 13th century CE. So we're talking about a really long time here. This quote is quite important. The idea is we see in the Upanishads, the appearance of our apparent separateness is an illusion. The texts dictate that there's this universal soul called Brahman, and that we're all part of this universal soul. Our own soul is equal to that of Brahman. This is monism. Now, not monotheism, because monotheism believes in a single personal God, but rather monism believes in a single powerful, single impersonal deity or God. One of the most important things about this was dharma, doing your caste-determined duty. Once you do that, you will get good karma, which allows you to go into better incarnations in this never-ending circle of death and rebirth. So you can move up the caste, and you do your dharma in order to get good karma, and to escape samsara, the dreaded cycle of rebirth and death and rebirth, so that you can achieve moksha, this mystical ecstasy / release / dreamless sleep in which you are united with Brahman. So that is it. Hopefully that was helpful to you.